the Hillary Clinton Benghazi stuff. It does matter, Hillary. It does. What the hell was happening in Benghazi? The ambassador, Chris Stevens, Sean Smith, Tyrone Woods, Glenn Doherty. What happened to those guys? Why were they even in Benghazi? My theory, they were running guns, or the ambassador was trying to stop the gun running or continue the gun running to, Lindsey Graham's favorite and John McCain's favorite group, which is now in charge of Syria and killing all the Christians. By the way, just want you to know that. The House spent $7 million, found no smoking gun. Of course, Clinton, what's weird is all of her, hard drives just kind of disappeared. Why was she saying immediately that this was a 9/11 video when it wasn't? 30,000 deleted messages. That's a sideshow. I mean, just what happened there? We need to know. Why were the State Department's logs scrubbed, cables scrubbed, real-time decisions scrubbed? Why wouldn't you let the Navy fly the shit? First they said we didn't have any planes there. And then the naval officers were like, I can't take it anymore. Yes, we could have done something. They told us not to. Then you have the Biden family corruption. Hunter's laptop. I want to know. So you don't go after Hunter Biden. I want to know who in the FBI was in charge of that laptop, making sure that nobody knew about that laptop. I want to know all of the people that were involved in saying, oh, you know what? That's just a conspiracy theory. I want those people to go to jail. Burisma, $83,000 a month for Hunter. No energy experience. What happened to that? How come I know that there were people in the State Department, if I'm not mistaken, that came and said to the White House and Joe Biden, this is a problem. This is a problem. Well, if it's a problem then, it's a problem now, and are we ever going to correct it? And it's not about going after Biden or whatever. It's about making sure this system works. Because if you can't trust it, all of that stuff. Jeffrey Epstein, he hangs himself with a paper sheet. Okay. Conveniently, when one camera goes down, and it's the one camera on his cell. Oh, and what were they, sleeping? What was it? The two guards that were supposed, all of a sudden they fell asleep? Mm-hmm. Okay, could be. Or is it because, the flight logs from the Lolita Express show Bill Clinton 26 times on that plane. Trump once, Prince Andrew dozens. The lawsuit against Maxwell unsealed bits of it in 2024, but they don't detail anything. Why is this still being held? Now, I'm fine, but I haven't heard Pam Bondi say we're not discussing this because there's an investigation going and charges are pending. That would make me happy. But that's not what they're saying. Why? See, this is why I think the most likely thing is it's just going to show us today, these JFK files, it's just going to show us just a failed system. That's what it's going to show us, a failed system. And there's nothing that they really were hiding except their mass incompetence. Because you could look at all of these things and say it was mass incompetence. I don't believe it was. I know something happened with Benghazi. I don't know about the 9/11, Sandy Berger stuff. I don't know about that. And that involved Clinton and I believe George H.W. Bush. Maybe it was just, I heard at the time it was both Bush and Clinton. I don't know. But who made that go away? Where are the tapes and the photos and all the names from Epstein? Who is Epstein really collecting all of this stuff? Who is he doing it for? P. Diddy. What's happening with Diddy? Arrested September 2024. Sex trafficking, racketeering, freak-offs, coerced women, drugs, recordings, children. It's pretty ugly. Why didn't we know about that? Why has nothing happened? Isn't he in jail?
Yeah.
So how is it that Epstein and Diddy can go to jail, but no one else is going to jail? There's no one else involved in that. What about the people who were buying the children or were part of the set? What happened?
I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, Ghislaine.
She did.
But she was just recruiting the kids.
She was very heavily involved.
I know she was recruiting the kids. But where are the buyers? It's like slavery is wrong and we're going to get all those slave traders. But nobody looks at the buyers, the ones actually that bought all the slaves and were whipping the slaves the whole time. You're like, there is one party we're missing here. Why aren't we doing that? I don't know. The seized footage, that should be out. Who's holding those things back? And it could be a very good reason because charges are pending. But do you believe that? Because I don't. I hope, but I don't believe that. I want to believe that. The Nord Stream pipeline. You had the president of the United States come out and say, it'll be no more. You don't stop this, the Nord Stream pipeline will be no more. Mr. President, what do you mean by that? Trust me, we have our ways. There won't be a Nord Stream pipeline. And then it's blown up underwater in an operation that really every expert in the world says only the United States could have done that. And we're expected to believe that it was a husband and wife on a rented yacht who got on their scuba gear and set up this elaborate explosion and got away with it? Come on. Please. Another thing that needs to be exposed, because these things have consequences. January 6th, the pipe bomber. The FBI that was on the grounds of January 6th. How was that coordinated? And if it was the Trump campaign and Glenn Beck was the president of it, then that should be known and I should have a fair trial to make my case. But that should be known. I don't care who it is, that needs to be known. How come none of that is known? How come no one is asking if Joe Biden was so incompetent he couldn't run for president, he could run the White House? Oh, and by the way, then we find out that none of the signatures are his. All of these bills that he signed, like one of them. And you know which one was? It was the one saying, I am not going to run again. I won't run for a second term. That's the only one that was really his. Why? Why was that the only one that was his? Is that because that's the only one he was really involved in? I don't know. But who is hiding his actual condition? Isn't that important to know? You have the Butler, Pennsylvania shooter, Thomas Crooks. You now have people saying in the Secret Service and other places, USAID, those kinds of people that have been overthrowing governments, that's trained. We recognize that. Okay? How about the shooter in Vegas? Why the hell don't we know anything about that? Are you kidding me? Nothing? The COVID stuff. Why is nobody going to jail on that? They perjured themselves in front of Congress. Millions of people died. What? By the way, we have the MLK tapes, the RFK. Those are still sealed. Why? Again? And are those the ones that are important to us now? I guess, you got to take it in order, but those aren't the ones. What happened to RFK, JFK, MLK? I'd like to know, but those aren't the ones that are, I'm like, we've got to know right now. Why is there a congressional slush fund? $17 million paid out since 1997 for harassment claims, and we don't know who those harassment claims were about in Congress. That's my tax money. $17 million went to cover up, sexual harassment claims settled with my money, your money. No names, no dates, no amounts. It should all be opened up. The Pentagon and the UFO, the chemtrails, I don't know. Is that true? I don't know. But none of this can be believed until we are completely transparent. And then you'll reduce the population down to about 6 to 8% that just never believe anything. And that you can live as a society like that. You cannot live with 20, 30, 40, 50% saying, I don't trust anything that comes from the government. That's what has to be corrected, and it has to start today.